What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the League Express podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Before we get into today's episode, we just had to make a quick announcement. Martin and I will be going on a short break over the next 2 weeks. I'm going to be doing some travel through Belgium and Germany, and Martin's going to be focusing on wrapping things up for the 2023 calendar year at League Express. So, a little bit going on over the next 2 weeks, but if anything big does happen, I'm sure we'll find a way to cover it, whether that be over a Zoom call or something like that. But fingers crossed nothing dramatic happens, although we do love when news breaks. So, short break over the next 2 weeks, and then we'll be right back before Christmas to record an episode, and then, we'll see how things go for the rest of 2023. But we'd just like to quickly take the chance to thank you guys for tuning in every single week. We're steadily growing our subscriber base on YouTube, and we're getting more and more listeners every week with each episode. So thank you all for your support. If you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you go down, hit that subscribe button on the YouTube channel. It also gives you guys notifications when we do upload videos, so you never miss one of our weekly episodes. So make sure you go ahead and do that, guys. But thanks again for your support. And without further ado, let's get into this week's episode. Cheers. All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the League Express podcast. My name's Jake Kiernan, and joining me as always is the editor of League Express, Martin Sadler. Martin, how was your weekend?
Well, it wasn't so bad, actually, Jake. It was pretty good, really. But yesterday, Monday, was a horror show for me because we got a power cut where I live, and we didn't have any power all night from 7 o'clock in the evening till 3 o'clock this morning. No. So that was not much fun, mate, at all, I'll tell you. And I'd love to know what the cause of it was. But anyway, we're all back. We've got lots of power here in Brighouse, and it's a pleasure to see you again. So we'll crack on with it. The other thing was, by the way, that it was really freezing cold this morning, and my car took a lot of defrosting, I'll tell you.
Oh, no.
But no, great to be here again. Yeah, and lots to talk about, I think.
Yeah, fair bit to go off over the past week or so. We've had a lot of news released, and I'll tell you what, though, it is getting bloody cold. As an Australian over here, I witnessed my first minus temperature day.
But you're still not regretting coming, are you?
No, not yet.
Not yet, no.
And
how much further does the temperature have to fall before you do regret it?
If it reaches minus 10, well, I'll be staying inside, I think. So, we'll see. But it worries me that technically we're not even in winter yet. So
no.
A few more days yet, and
absolutely
we'll get there. But I've got my big puffer jacket here behind me that I sported this morning.
And don't watch any videos from Australia, whatever you do.
No, absolutely. All my friends are sending me bloody beach pictures at the moment, which is very frustrating. But, what can you do? Our time will come next year, and hopefully it's a nice warm summer. Now, over the past, I don't know how many days ago, it was probably 4 or 5 days ago, Martin, we had some rule changes come in, introduced for next season. They include a change around the 18th man. So now an 18th man can be used after 2 HIAs or injuries, and they can be used after a player goes down to an injury caused by foul play. That's my understanding.
Yes.
So that's a positive rule change. Some of the others that have been changed is now when there's a penalty during the scrum, the team receiving the penalty will have the option to repack the scrum, which will encourage some more attacking play when attacking the line, I believe. And there's also been a change around the 6 again rule. So teams with the ball in possession coming out of their own end in that sort of 40-metre zone will be given a penalty where they can then opt to kick for touch or tap the ball rather than a 6 again, which we saw defensive teams trying to use it to their advantage to hold a player down so they could get the defensive line set.
Absolutely,
what are your initial reactions to these 3 key rule changes?
Well, my initial reaction to the to the 18th man rule is that it's just part of the journey to having 5 substitutes or 5 interactions generally, because interestingly, we made a decision at the start of 2023 at League Express that when we include match reports in the paper, we weren't going to include the 18th man unless he actually played in the game, and there are very few examples of players who did play as an 18th man in Super League this year. it's fairly obvious that number will increase quite dramatically next year, and I think that will probably make us change our policy so that we will list the 18th man separately and then indicate whether he played or not. And I expect that there will be probably one or two each week who will play. But as I say, I think we're en route to just having 5 substitutes who will be able to be used for any reason ultimately, and I think that probably makes a lot of sense, really, because I think with the much greater emphasis on head knocks, we're going to see that probably next month in December. I think the RFL is going to publish a new study on head knocks, and I think they're going to tighten up on head knocks in a game. More players will be yellow carded, more players will be red carded, and I think it's a good thing to be able to have more players available on the bench. So I think that's a very good thing. In terms of the change to the 6 again rule, again I support that move because as we said before, a defensive team in the opponent's half of the field, particularly, the nearer you get to the opponent's line, the 6 again rule doesn't mean much to them if they can set their defensive line even by, yielding an extra tackle. And this will stop them from infringing, I think. So I think it's a good move. It's an interesting development. The 6 again rule is still a fairly controversial rule, and I notice, really, its use has declined this season compared to last season, and hopefully it'll continue to decline because teams will, learning to live with it, are learning to get off the tackle player quickly, not hold down, and so on. That's the object of the rule, isn't it? So hopefully the rule is working, and the more it works, the fewer 6 agains we'll see, I think.
No, absolutely. And I just had a little thought in the back of my mind just then. When Christian Wolf and the Tongan team were over here, they were sort of complaining about the slowness of the ruck speed over here compared to down under. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see, if the game does continue to get quicker over the coming years. But
quicker in the ruck, yes. I think that's what we need. We need a tidy ruck, don't we? That's and I think that we'll see more players hopefully trying to touch the ball with their foot as well as they do so much more effectively in the NRL, don't they?
Yeah, well, that's it. I think I've seen a lot of play the balls in the Super League over the past 12 months that sort of go straight through the legs, and the referee doesn't really blow the penalty.
I know. Well, the referees, it's in the rules that you're supposed to touch the ball with your foot, but the referees are obviously advised to be selective in the way they apply the rules. And there's no doubt that if you applied every rule religiously, then you'd be blowing up a lot, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what we probably don't want to see, most fans, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a bloody coach killer when you see your team get penalised for not playing the ball correctly.
Oh, yes,
hate to see it. Now, the scrum option to repack the scrum, I personally love this decision.
Yes.
We've seen a few more set plays be developed over the years around the scrum where the lock will hold the ball in, trying to get the defensive line offside.
Yeah.
And then when that does happen at the scrum and the lock holds it in, it gives the half-back or the scrum half the opportunity to run around and then receive the ball at first receiver from the
to see a try from a
head.
Scrum is a great thing, I think. It certainly creates the space that the attacking side can exploit, and it's some clubs do practice that and practice it very effectively, and it's great to see it working when it does work, in my view. And so I think that's a good move as well. I think this is quite unusual that we're actually saying we support rule changes that have actually been made. There must be something odd about us, I think, today.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's all good news. We're really excited to see those rules implemented next season. Speaking of next season, though, we've had the schedule released. Some of the round 1 matchups have been announced, and I read in your column, Martin, you were quite excited by some of the, I think it was the Hull matchup.
Hull FC versus Hull KR was the first game of the season. It's hard to imagine you could have a bigger game than that to start the season. And I'm a great believer as well. I mean, Thursday night games are great in that, a lot of people watch Thursday night games because there's not much football on. Usually there isn't a football game on TV on a Thursday night. There's not much competition for a game. But the problem is that when you have a Thursday night game, having a game where one side has to cross the Pennines and travel a long distance means that they're probably not going to take many fans with them. Yep. So I'm a great believer in having Thursday night games between teams that are fairly are located fairly close together. And, you couldn't really get much closer, could you, than Hull versus Hull KR. So, I think also Hull have strengthened, I think, over the close season. I mean, last year on Good Friday, Hull KR went to Hull and beat them 40-0 in front of 20,000 and odd people, and that was a massive letdown for the Hull fans. Hopefully that won't happen on the 15th of February this coming year. Hopefully it'll be a far closer game, whoever wins, and it should be a tremendous TV spectacle as well. And it would be great to think that Hull and Hull KR will be able to sell out that game and fill the what's now called the MKM Stadium, and give us a massive start to the season.
Yeah, absolutely right. And it's one of the things the NRL's moved away from in the past few years. And, we always used to have our seasons begin with like the Broncos playing against the Cowboys. And that used to always be round one, generally game 1 or 2. You'd always have like the Rabbitohs play the Roosters. But I think their reasoning in the NRL from moving away from those rivalries is that they believe that no matter what happens in round 1, people are going to go watch the game. Because,
that's probably true, yeah.
And then they're thinking, well, why don't we put the rivalry on round 3 when maybe that attention might die off a little bit?
Yes. Oh, there's a science. There's a science to a fixture list, in my view, and it's a very important part of marketing the game, isn't it? To get a fixture list that appeals to everybody.
No, absolutely.
So as I say, I think Hull and Hull KR, it's great to see that game being played, and they meet again in round 6 on Good Friday when the game's at Hull Kingston Rovers. So, they'll meet each other twice in the first 6 rounds.
Yeah, what a way to open the season. I can't wait. Hopefully that game sets the tone for the rest of the season with a good, hard, contested battle. But moving on, we also had news that
Can I just say something else, though, about the fixture list, which I've said in my column this week. We're going to have Sky broadcasting all 6 games each weekend from Super League in 2024. That's great. That's marvellous, isn't it? But wouldn't you think that, therefore, the people who compile the fixtures and the clubs themselves would want to have each fixture given a discrete time at the weekend when it's the only game being played and everybody who wants to watch a live game of rugby league can watch all 6 games over the weekend? So I've suggested, it should be 1 game on Thursday, 1 on Friday, 2 on Saturday, perhaps kicking off at 12:30 and 3:30, and similarly on Sunday with similar kick-off times, so that we could now, for example, the first weekend of games, we've got on Friday night Leeds Rhinos versus Salford Red Devils, Lee Leopards versus Huddersfield Giants, St Helens versus London Broncos. Now, you can only watch one of those games live. If you want to watch the other 2, you'll have to record them, assuming that that's possible, and you'll have to watch them knowing what the results are. Well, that's going to reduce the audience, isn't it? If you were going to go to maximise the audience, you'd want to do what the NRL does, which is to give every game its own discrete time, over the weekend. And that works great for the NRL, and it enhances the value of the NRL's broadcast rights. But we just look to be almost deliberately depressing the value of our broadcast rights. So those 2 games, let's imagine Leeds versus Salford was the Friday night game. In my view, there's no reason why Leigh v Huddersfield and St Helens v London shouldn't be on the Sunday afternoon. And they'll probably get bigger gates, I think, to be perfectly honest. And I think they'd certainly get more people watching them, through either on TV or on a streaming service.
And what is the obsession, I guess, for clubs to want to play on a Friday night? Is it that then they get their weekend to sort of recover and go and do things with their family?
Well, certainly from a Leeds perspective, for example, I can understand them wanting to play on Friday because they get a much bigger corporate rollout for hospitality. They've got terrific hospitality, at Leeds. I think you've been there and you've seen, the facilities that they have. And you can understand them wanting to fill their enormous, hospitality rooms at Leeds. And I assume the same is true of other clubs, although not to quite the same extent. But there's no reason. When we switched rugby league to summer in this country, the idea was that we'd have beautiful Sunday afternoons of being able to go out and watch rugby league, on a, gorgeous sunny afternoon. And yet there's no Sunday afternoon game on round one. I mean, that just is missing a trick, surely, from the way that I see it. I mean, we do have 2 Saturday afternoon games, Castleford versus Wigan at 3 o'clock and Catalans versus Warrington in Perpignan at 5:30. But, we ought to be having more games at times when more people want to see them, in my view.
Yeah, I always remember growing up watching the football and hearing Gus Gould on the commentary always saying, how good Sunday afternoon football.
Absolutely,
and you've got to love your Sunday afternoon football.
Of course.
And, when it's a nice afternoon, the sun's out, the track's dry, and you see a bit of attacking football. There's no better way to end your weekend, in my view.
You see far better football because, apart from anything else, in the afternoon, the ball is unlikely to have a lot of dew on it, isn't it? As the temperatures drop, it becomes much more likely that the ball will be wet and have dew on it that makes it hard to handle. So the football, on balance, would tend to be better on an afternoon, but we're not going to see much of it, unfortunately.
No, well, maybe in years to come they might listen. But I will just quickly touch on the proposed streaming service that Sky is going to roll out. There's not much detail around it at the moment, but, is this something that you'd support or are looking forward to?
Well, we'll have to see. Yes, I mean, we'll have to see what it looks like, won't we? And let's hope it works well. Until we see the details, though, it's one of those things that it's difficult to talk about with any authority, I think.
Hopefully it's easily accessible and everyone can watch the games without too many technical difficulties.
Yeah, let's hope so. Well, most people have got TVs now that can, download streaming services, haven't they? So, let's hope it works well. They're going to have to find some new commentators, though, aren't they, Sky?
Yeah, absolutely.
With all these games, so I don't know if you fancy making a bid for one of those.
Maybe
one of those positions, Jake. But I'm sure you'd be great at it.
We'll see. I can, talk to a brick wall. So hopefully,
well, you are doing, aren't you?
Yeah. No. But also, just want to touch on any news on Channel 4 with their broadcast.
None whatsoever. They're not prepared to comment at this moment. They've not said yes, and they've not said no. They're still having talks, apparently, but they won't comment on them until those talks are finalised, either with a deal or with no deal. So I'm afraid I have spoken to people at Channel 4, but they insist that they don't want... They're not prepared to make any attributable comment to them because it's obviously a delicate negotiation for them. And but having said that, I mean, I hope that Channel 4 do... carry on. I think they've been a breath of fresh air. It's been good to get a different slant on Super League games. I mean, this year, the last couple of years, we've had Channel 4 covering Super League and Viaplay, Premier Sport as it used to be, covering the Championship. Now, Viaplay have pulled out, which is very sad, and it would be sad if Channel 4 pulled out as well, because it's great to have, more than one outlet focusing on the game. I mean, we also have the BBC covering the Challenge Cup, for example, which is a great thing as well. So, this year we had 4 different TV channels covering our sport, and it's not surprising that the attendance figures went up, probably not greatly, but significantly, because more people were getting the chance to see rugby league at its best. And we urgently need to make sure that continues if possible.
Is there any word on whether there will be another provider that will go and film the championship?
Not that
matches?
I'm aware of at the moment, but you never know. I think the championship is a great competition, and obviously Wakefield are in it this year, and they've sold 4,500 season tickets apparently already, probably more than that now. So there'll be a lot of interest in the championship and a lot of great games, and I think somebody ought to pick it up, in my view, and it would be great to see it being broadcast.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll move on. So there's been some talks resuming between Samoa and England around the possibility of that 3-game series going ahead next autumn, Martin. It's a bit of a surprise considering it seemed like Samoa had sort of fully pulled out of those discussions.
Yes, it does. It did seem a surprise when they put out a press release on Monday. That caught us all on the hop, I think. None of us had imagined that those discussions would reopen. But it now does seem that it might be on. We can't take anything for granted until, a deal is agreed. But, I mean, it's interesting to sort of think, well, why did Samoa pull out in the first place? And I'm told, they had some discussions with Tonga, and I think they reacted to what Tonga told them by sort of thinking that the Tongans, perhaps hadn't been made as welcome in this country as they perhaps should have been. And I think the Tongans actually were quite upset by some of the controversy that arose during the series. Sean Wayne picked up on some things and made quite a big issue of them, obviously to motivate his own players. But I don't think the Tongans were too happy about that, to be honest, and they sort of gave that message back to the Samoans. I mean, there's obviously a strong link between the Samoans and the Tongans, and I think the Samoans were a bit dismayed by what they heard and decided to focus on the Pacific Cup rather than coming on a tour. Hopefully they'll change their mind, and hopefully we'll learn quite a bit from that as well, and perhaps treat them with a bit more respect, hopefully. And it would be great to have a great series against them, wouldn't it, next year over here?
Absolutely. And I think those comments and that controversy that sort of arose around Game 2 following the match, some of Sean Wayne's comments, I think that took a lot of us by surprise in the media because nothing had been said leading up to that game, and it just seemed like there was... we didn't know that there was something boiling under the surface there.
No.
And then, those comments by Sean Wayne sort of
Sean's
came
a very
surprise.
passionate guy who, takes the England job very seriously, and I think he likes to create rivalry, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. But sometimes you've just got to be a bit sensitive about who you're dealing with, and it's not always wise to create controversy where none exists. Really, you might say. But hopefully this will be sorted out, and we'll see the Samoans here in 2024, and I'm sure there'd be a great challenge. They've got some great players, haven't they? And it would be great to see them over here.
And I mean, I'm sure if Sean Wayne could have his time over again, he would still have, made those comments. And this is rugby league; you can't allow your feelings to get hurt. But yeah, I guess something like that would probably slide against Australia and New Zealand, Tier 1 nations. They'd probably give it back.
Walter off a duck's back, yeah, for them.
That's right. Yeah. But when it's a Tier 2 nation, they're it's an expensive exercise for them to come over.
Yeah.
And
well, the thing is that the Tongans really. It was a historic tour. That first test, was the first of a 3-test series with a new nation coming over here. And they should have been treated with greater respect than perhaps we gave them. I mean, I'm not sure that I read any comment, for example, by any of the RFL or RL commercial directors anywhere saying thank you to the Tongans. I'm sure they must have done, but I didn't see them. Thank you to the Tongans for coming over here. It's been a pleasure to host you, and I'm not sure what the RFL did to make the Tongans feel welcome over here, but maybe it's a lesson for them as well. And, it's important to ensure that when you have a touring team that they are welcomed and they are... it is made clear to them that their presence here is valued, and that's quite important.
And the other thing too is the fact that Tonga agreed to come over before the CBA was even agreed upon.
Yes.
And that was what was stopping all other nations from planning any fixtures,
right.
whereas
Yes,
Tonga were the ones that put their hand up and said, yeah, we'll do it.
Yeah, Christian Wolff was great. He made it absolutely clear that they wanted to come, and it was a great a great thing for them to do. And I don't think we realise, actually, all of us at least, how important that was.
Absolutely. Well, fingers crossed we can get a deal done around that schedule next year. I think it'll be a great three-game series.
Yeah, let's hope so. We'll see what happens. It's not signed, sealed, and delivered yet, but hopefully it can be.
Absolutely. Now, moving on, we also had our shortlist release for the Golden Boot nominees. For the men's, we've had Harry Smith, James Fisher-Harris, Joseph Tarpanay, and Payne Haas all announced. Probably not many surprises there. Two New Zealanders obviously made sense given that they put 30 points on Australia in that historic win. Harry Smith deservedly in the final four there, and
that's a great boost for Harry Smith, isn't it? And he did have a great series against the Tongans, but I think a Kiwi will probably win it this year, particularly after their 30-0 win over Australia. I think James Fisher-Harris was a great skipper of the Kiwis.
I agree, yeah.
And I think he's probably the main man, really. But it's not often that a forward does win the Golden Boot, is it?
No. It's I can't remember off the top of my head the last time.
No, just from memory, no, I can't either. It's normally a hard... Well, Cameron Smith won it, of course, but he was a hooker and not really the conventional running forward. But he won it in 2019, I think. But forwards play an important role. It's interesting, isn't it? Because the Golden Boot used to be presented by our company until we sold the intellectual rights of the Golden Boot to the International Federation. And when we ran it, we used to the criterion then was that it had to be the best player in the world. And the International Federation, when they bought it from us, they changed the rule to say that it had to be the best player selected from that year's international matches. So that excludes players like Reece Walsh, Caelan Ponga, and other players who
Nathan Cleary,
who didn't play. Nathan Cleary's performance in the grand final made it clear to me that he was potentially the best player in the world.
Absolutely.
But because he didn't play for Australia in the Pacific Cup, he doesn't qualify, and I think that's a real shame. Personally, once they bought the Golden Boot offers, I suppose they felt able to change the criteria, the eligibility criteria. But I think that was a mistake, and I think that Nathan Cleary in any other year, say if we'd still been running it, I think he would have probably been the favourite this year. But those are the rules, and those are the rules you go with. And I think James Fisher-Harris would be an incredibly worthy winner of it this year. So I'd have no problem, in accordance with saying that he was the best international player this year. But Harry Smith as well. Harry Smith showed incredible maturity against the Tongans, and if he wins it, I'd be absolutely delighted to see another English name on the list of Golden Boot winners.
Yeah, absolutely. And I, like yourself, I probably prefer that old style of the best player in the world. I know for me, when we're debating on who should be the next immortal in Australia, I always bring up the fact that Darren Lockyer won a Golden Boot at fullback and at standoff, and I always say that, that to be able to win that in two positions as the best player in the world.
Incredible, yeah.
I think that's incredible to have on your resume.
Absolutely.
And one of the bargaining points I always bring up in discussions. But, nowadays, unless you're playing internationals, you're not sort of eligible for that award.
No, that's right. That's right.
But and then obviously in the women we have 4 shortlisted nominees as well: Georgia Hale, Meli Hafunga, Appy Nichols, and Tamika Upton from Australia too.
Well, Georgia Hale, of course, used to play for York Valkyrie until last year, and she's made a big impression in the NRLW this year. But again, it's international matches that make the difference, and the Kiwis beat the Kiwi Ferns beat the Gillaroos for the first time since, was it 2016 or 15? I can't remember now.
Been a while,
for a long time, and so it's not surprising that 3 of their players are featured in the in the shortlist. And Meli Hufanga, my goodness, she's a strong a strong centre, scored a great try in that final game against the Australians, and they're all great players. Tamika Upton, I was amazed to see that she was making her Gillaroos debut this year. I'd assumed that she'd played before, but no, she hadn't. And she's a terrific running fullback, I've got to say.
She's always featured for Queensland at the state of origin level, but not quite for the Gillaroos.
No.
And Mele Hufunga, the way she runs the ball, the way she can run a line out wide, she's nearly unstoppable close to the line.
Yeah, she's a very long-legged sort of a runner, isn't she? She's just a when she gets going, she's got such terrific pace, and she can score tries from 80 metres without much trouble, really. It seems.
No, absolutely. And we've also got our wheelchair Golden Boot nominees there. I think you've got them there in front of you.
Jeremy Bourson of France and England's Lewis King.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
So good luck to those two guys, and it would be great to see a French player winning a Golden Boot, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we do need to boost the game in France, but obviously the decision will be based purely on which of those two is regarded as having been the best player. To
be honest with you, we need to do a better job of boosting the game in Australia as well. I'm not quite sure. I don't think it gets the same media coverage in Australia that it does over here, which I think
the wheelchair game. No, that's right. That's probably right. There is, of course, controversy attached to it because there's the French accuse the English of playing too many able-bodied players because I think you've got to have on the court at any one time 3 players who are officially carry disabilities, right. But you can play able-bodied players as well, and so I think we probably take advantage of that rule more than the French claim that they do, but it's an interesting discussion, that, isn't it?
Maybe install for some discussion around rule changes for
2025.
Yeah,
well, you never know. You never know. Yeah.
Oh God. Well, we'll see what happens. Now, I wanted to also get your thoughts, Martin, on some of the jersey design, some of the outfits we're seeing being released ahead of next season. I made a little comment to you in our discussions before we started recording that I was surprised by some of the colourways teams are going with. Castleford Tigers, I believe, they released a green and black jersey. I think Warrington also has an alternate jersey which is green and a sort of navy blue colour, which I think to me is a little bit foreign, given that you associate your team with a certain colour, but to completely go away from that came as a bit of a surprise.
It does surprise me as well. I'm a great believer in teams being identified by their colours. Jake, if you were to say claret and gold in this country, then you would mean Huddersfield Rugby League Club. If you say black and amber, that normally means Castleford. If you say, for example, blue and amber, that normally means Leeds. Or cherry and white normally means Wigan. Or the red V, that means St Helens. Or irregular black and white stripes, that was always seared into my mind to mean Hull FC. Blood and gold means Catalan Dragons. I think teams are very foolish to move away from those colours. You can have an away strip that differs from your home strip, but which still has those team colours in it. And I'll never understand why teams think it's wise to choose colours for away strips that have nothing to do with their standard team colours. I don't understand the logic of it. I know they will say that they're hoping to sell more of them, but I think they'd sell more if they were in the established colours than if they go for colours that have no real meaning for the team. So it's odd to me, and I'm a great believer in the fact that identity means such a lot. When you're marketing a team, you use every tool at your disposal to market that team's image in the minds of fans and potential fans. And I don't think you're doing that very well when you choose alternate jerseys that don't relate to the team's colours.
Do you feel like there's some sort of feeling amongst the fans that this could just be a little bit of a money grab from the clubs?
Well, yeah, but I mean, as I say, I think if you can't criticise the clubs for wanting to generate money because if they can't do that, then they're not doing so well. No, I don't criticise clubs for wanting to generate more income, but what I'm saying is I think they would generate more income by having colours that relate, for like Castleford, black and amber, or Leeds, blue and amber, rather than picking colours that just don't have that meaning. I mean, I could be absolutely wrong. It could be that, Castleford fans love nothing more than buying jerseys that have no relation to black and amber. Who knows? Yeah. If you don't see the income ledger for the club, who knows what
they might have a nice pair of green shoes that would match with the green
knows?
Jersey, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always prepared to be proven wrong, but I'm not sure that I would be on this occasion.
Yeah. Moving on, we've had a little bit of transfer news down under. I think in the last sort of 24 hours or so, Connor Tracy, the young Sharks sort of utility, played in the halves, can play fullback. He's been released to go and join the Bulldogs now.
They're signing everybody, aren't they?
Yeah, so that's sort of the reason why I brought it up, because I'm a little bit baffled by the signing, because they've also signed in the past 12 months, so they've signed Drew Hutchison, another halfback, Kurt Mann, who can play in the halves but is more of a utility player, Jake Turpin, who can play 9 or utility, Blake Taff, who can play in the halves or fullback, and Jamin Salmon, who is also a half. Then they've also got, Matt Burton on top of that and a host of other playmakers. Makes me wonder, what are they going to do, or where are they going to play all of these players? It's
amazing, isn't it? I mean, the Bulldogs are a really interesting case because they are traditionally one of the powerhouses of the of Australian Rugby League, and yet in recent years they've been doing it tough. I mean, they were 15th out of 17 last year. They signed Cameron Ciraldo as the coach at the start of the year. He was expected to do great things. Unfortunately, it didn't quite turn out that way. Couldn't get them into the top 8, and there were quite a few upsets along the way. I mean, Raymond Fatala-Mariner was the captain, and yet not long ago he was being excluded from the club because he apparently had a fallout with the coach, and that's always a bad sign, isn't it? When things become public like that, it sort of affects the faith that fans have got in a club. And of course, they've got Phil Gould there. I mean, he was photographed in a Sydney cafe last week, wasn't he? Talking to Adin Fanua-Blake, the New Zealand Warriors prop forward, about a potential move to the Bulldogs. And it seems I was reading somebody in one of the Australian newspapers saying that, there seem to be more photographs of Phil Gould in cafes meeting players from other clubs than, anything else in the Australian newspapers. Yep. So you wonder what's going on there. I mean, Phil Gould is an incredibly smart guy. He knows more about rugby league in his little finger probably than I do, in my brain. But yet that combination of Gould and Ciraldo, which was thought to be such a winning combination, has yet to deliver. And as you say, they almost look to have an embarrassment of riches there, don't they, with those players?
It's almost like every one of those signings sort of comes across as a bit of a panic signing. And I don't know, I was sort of looking at them thinking, are they going to try and play a different style of football next year, like a positionless kind of style of football where they just have a whole team of playmakers on the field? And
who knows? I mean, it would be interesting if they did, wouldn't it?
But the game would be a lot faster.
Who knows what they're going to do?
Yeah, and I mean, I sort of liken that to basketball over in the NBA over the past few years. It sort of went through a stage there where the big man, the big centre that would sort of stand under the rim and catch all the rebounds and have the putback dunks, they seemed to phase out. And the league became a bit of a playmaking league where you'd have 2 or 3 playmakers and a lot of shooters, and it sort of became positionless basketball. So I wonder if maybe that's what they have planned, but I highly doubt it. It might just be good depth. Who knows?
Yeah.
Now, we also have been talking about this over the past few weeks. The NRL looking to bring in a sort of an incentive for clubs to poach rugby union players, a salary cap exemption. Now, I saw some rumours and reports circulating last night that the Knights are looking to sign Tyrone Thompson, who is the twin brother, I believe, of Leo Thompson, who plays for the Knights and also played for the Kiwis in the Pacific Championship this season. He had a really good series, in my view. Now, I also heard in a podcast this week that Leo Thompson, he grew up playing rugby union and was converted to rugby league at the age of 19. And to see how well he's playing at such a young age and how quickly he's transitioned, I wonder if them going after Tyrone Thompson, his twin brother, whether they're hoping that will have the same effect.
Well, I think Tyrone Thompson has obviously suggested that he's open to the idea. But then again, it depends what he's being paid as an All Black and what he could be paid as a member of the Newcastle Knights team. But we'll just have to wait and see on that. But I'm really unsure about this proposal, though, to give exemptions for signing rugby union players, because as far as I'm concerned, it just gives young kids the incentive to play rugby union to then get a big signing back in the NRL, and I think these signings very rarely work, to be perfectly honest. Interestingly, the most recent signing from rugby union in Australia was probably Lachie Miller, wasn't it? Who was signed by Cronulla, then went to Newcastle, but was edged out by Caelan Ponga at fullback for Newcastle, and is coming to Leeds in 2024. And he looks a very good player to me. But that he wasn't. I mean, I think he was pretty unlucky to be competing with Caelan Ponga for a position at Newcastle.
Absolutely.
But it's not obvious that he was a great success, although I think he was pretty good. But hopefully he'll be a star signing for Leeds.
I'd love to one day sit down and ask him, what interest he had from other NRL clubs when he decided to leave the Knights, because I can only imagine there'd be a few clubs showing interest. Maybe he just wanted to come over here and test himself in Super League.
You never know.
But yeah, and the other news from down under, the Brisbane Broncos are reportedly giving Kurt Capewell permission to leave following an offer he's received from the Warriors, which a bit of a surprise, but the Broncos did just re-sign Jordan Ricky, and they have a lot of great young back rowers. So. Well,
Capewell is a very good player in my view, and I'm surprised they're prepared to consider letting him go. But obviously they've got a lot of talent there, so obviously they think that they can make him surplus to requirements.
No, that's right. And when they still have to re-sign Ezra Mam and Reece Walsh, that money has to come from somewhere.
It does,
unfortunately.
yes, indeed.
So,
yeah.
But I've just before we're talking about in League Express this week, Martin, we're counting down the 50 greatest moments from the year. Now, I think this week is sort of the first.
Yes, we're moments 50 to 41. And, we've got a number of things there. Probably the major one there is the marquee player rule change, which now that's coming in at number 46. And that is a rule change that was made earlier this year, obviously. But from 2024 onwards, you can have 3 marquee players in Super League. And that's really quite interesting. The third one has to be an Englishman club trained, and that's designed to try and prevent great young English players going to the NRL, which is probably a pretty thankless task, I would think, because if young players want to go to the NRL, they will go there. But nonetheless, it's really interesting to see that in Australia you've not adopted the marquee player rule. You don't have it at all, do you?
No.
So that, for example, if the and of course you probably don't have a threat from rugby union now. I know Joseph Suaalii is still down to go to play for Australian Rugby Union in 2025, but and you don't have a threat from us, I don't suppose, or you don't feel that there's a threat from us. But in theory, at least, we've seen recently 2 new owners in Super League, Mike Danson at Wigan and Matthew Ellis at Wakefield. Now, both those 2 guys are very wealthy individuals. They're not the only ones. Simon Moran at Warrington, for example. Now, if say Mike Danson at Wigan decided, for example, that he wanted to sign Nathan Cleary, he could potentially offer Nathan Cleary £1 million a year. and only £150,000 of that would count on the salary cap. So actually, potentially, if we had enough billionaires running rugby league clubs in England, we could raid Australia and get all the best players from the NRL.
Absolutely.
I obviously don't think it's going to happen because, A, we've not got that many billionaires, and B, they'd have to show that they wanted to do that. But having a marquee player rule potentially allows you to do that. And, you know, all you need is the people with the money and the will to put that into place. But, you know, who knows? You never quite know.
Sort of thinking, wouldn't the dream scenario be that, I guess, Penrith go on to win their fourth grand final in a row and then Wakefield get promoted back into the Super League? Then, I guess, what more does Cleary have to achieve in the NRL? Matthew Ellis could throw a big money offer at him.
Well, I'm sure he's always wanted to come and play for Wakefield. But, you know, who knows?
You know, imagine being able to market him to
who knows
football up here. He'd be unreal.
Yeah. But there are lots of very interesting things, you know, highlights of the year to look back on, and they are in League Express this week, the 50 most significant and memorable moments. And next week, next Monday, it will be countdown from 40 to 31.
And
so,
not an easy task, I can imagine, trying to pick which moments.
No, how do you actually pick which moment is more important than others? I mean, the thing to do is to look and see, well, what appears to have most significance for for the future. So, you know, we always like to look back and see how our predictions from earlier years worked out.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all personal preference, I guess. You know, you might see one thing more important than the other.
Two other things I'd like to talk about before we go. One is Michael Maguire. The New Zealand Rugby League parted company with Michael Maguire this year, and he's going to take up the New South Wales Blues in 2024. They said that there's a conflict of interest and he couldn't do two jobs, which I'm quite surprised about, really, because, you know, the fact is that he's enjoyed great success with the Kiwis, inflicting that 30-0 defeat on Australia. I think Michael Maguire's a great coach, and I wouldn't have made the decision if I'd been the New Zealand Rugby League. The fact is that the State of Origin is played mid-season, and the Pacific Cup, which New Zealand will be in again next year, is played at the end of the season. So I can't see that there's that much of a conflict of interest, really. And actually, if he's coaching the Blues, Michael Maguire will have a terrific insight into a lot of Australian players when it comes to coaching New Zealand.
Yeah.
So if anything, I would have thought that was an advantage for them, in that he will have unique insights. But they don't, you know, they've decided to go elsewhere, and it's not clear yet who will succeed Michael Maguire. And whoever that is, I mean, some people are saying Stacey Jones could be the guy, you know, great if it is, but that person, whoever it is, will be under a lot of pressure to replicate the sort of results that Michael Maguire has had this year.
And I can understand the argument if it was you were coaching New South Wales and Australia.
Oh,
but
yes.
New Zealand have nothing to do with State of Origin.
No.
And yeah, how intensive is the workload of being a coach for 3 games and then, you know, 3 or 4 at the end of the season?
Well, it's pretty intense, but only for the first part of the season, isn't it? Because, you know, I think the final game in State of Origin is played in July. So by then, it's over. And no doubt the, you know, period leading up to that, Maguire will be incredibly busy making, you know, doing the best he can with the Blues. But after that, his attention could turn to the Kiwis, and you know, it would be a smooth transition in my view. But you know, they've made their choice, and you know, they will obviously have to live with it.
And he's been on record saying that he wanted to do both
roles.
roles.
Of course, yes,
yeah,
and was perfectly capable.
Absolutely. And what he did with that New Zealand side, I'm a little bit worried as a Queenslander next year with him.
Yes, I think he's a smart guy, and it gives us a lot to look forward to on with State of Origin next year.
Absolutely. And was there something else you wanted to mention?
One other thing, yes, just to note, St Helens confirmed their squad numbers at the weekend, and Daryl Clark's got the number 9 shirt for St Helens, only the 3rd player since Super League began in 1996 to wear the number 9 shirt for St Helens. Kieran Cunningham wore it for 15 years. James Roby then wore it for 13 years. Isn't that incredible?
That's amazing.
And, Daryl Clark, well, he won't wear it for 13 years because he's already 30 or thereabouts. So, he won't have that long a tenure. But it's amazing to think that, it's such an iconic squad number 9 for St Helens. And I'm always surprised. I think squad numbers are a real marketing, offer rugby league really marketing potential that we don't use. I really do think, Saints announced their squad numbers in a very sort of quiet, sort of matter-of-fact way. I think they ought to make a lot more of it. They really should. In some other sports that I can think of, they make a really big thing of when a squad number passes from one player to another. They very often have a previous player who's worn that number coming back to, give the shirt to the new guy who's getting it for the first time. And we could make so much more of squad numbers than we do. It's like many things in our game. We don't know how to use them as marketing tools. And it's ridiculous because it wouldn't cost us anything. It's a form of marketing that doesn't cost you a penny, and yet it's easy to do, and it's crazy. It's also notable that Saints have got a vacant number 3 shirt with Will Hopewell having gone back to Australia, and they've not filled that shirt yet, and they've said they are still looking for somebody who can fill it. So that's going to be quite interesting. Yeah,
interesting to see who they can get because, I'd imagine there'd be a few centres out there or outside backs looking for a job. So,
you would think so, wouldn't you? But they've got to be pretty good to get into St Helens' side.
Oh, yeah.
It's not me or you they're looking for, is it?
No.
Me in particular.
Although, gladly put the hand up for a run in the experience. But
well, I'll recommend you. Yeah.
We'll see. No. All right, Martin. Well, I think I'm happy to wrap that up there. If you are,
yes, that's perfectly fine. I can't think of much else that we want to talk about.
It's been the news cycle's been generous to us over the past few weeks.
Yes.
With no football being played.
I think so.
The episodes would probably be over an hour if we were to talk games as well on top of this. But let's not forget to remind our listeners and viewers, if you do want to grab yourself a League Express subscription, head along to www.totalrl.com/shop. The Rugby League World magazine's
and
also
let's just
out
show
now.
the front cover. That's the front cover this week. Is this magic? Is it really magic to go to Elland Road?
That's it. And also on the back as well. Sorry, we've got the Rugby League World magazine.
Rugby League World, and you've got an article in it this month.
Yes.
That's why you're very keen to promote it.
No, absolutely.
You can read incredible words of wisdom from Jake if you buy this coming month's Rugby League World.
Yes, you might agree or disagree.
It's to be out this weekend.
Absolutely.
All you need is a subscription.
Yep.
And where do you get that, Jake?
www.totalrl.com/shop.
That's correct.
That's it. So
that's correct.
We'll get there one day at saying it fluently. But all right, guys, we'll leave it here. Thanks again for listening, and keen to do it all again.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks, Jake.
Cheers, mate.